Lonely Monk Productions. I don't know if y'all have heard Dreamwife's cover of Tattoo's All the Things She Said yet, but yo,
that's my Jawn!
Yo, displace the guilt and embrace the pleasure. You're tasting things that don't need to be measured. You ain't being judged, you won't get a What's
score.
good, friends and family, neighbors near and far? Welcome to an all-new episode of the Yo, That's My Jawn podcast. The podcast, website, brand, movement, way of life dedicated to the embrace and championing of your passions. I am your host, Nate Runkle, a.k.a. Paul Nate Treaties of the House Nate Treaties, a.k.a. Nate 3.0. Back at it again with yet another episode of the podcast. As always, I hope this podcast finds you all in good health and in good spirits. On today's episode, I chat with Craig Wedren about his life in music, how working and scoring TV and film grants him the ability to create without limitations, his latest album, The Dream Dreaming, and so much more. And that is coming up in a bit. But first, hey, how are we doing? Guess what? February is already over. We even had an extra day this year, and somehow that puppy flew right by, didn't it? If you haven't seen or heard on the socials, I've been playing out again more frequently, and flexing that muscle has been a whole heck of a lot of fun. Not just the playing, but the whole process, driving to the gig, the setup, meeting new people who just want to hear some music. It's been really great. Plenty of opportunities to see me on the stage coming up if you're into that sort of thing. My next gig is this upcoming weekend, Sunday, March 17th from 3 to 6 p.m. at Hares Hill Brewery for some St. Patty's Day shenanigans. I've been having an issue as of late getting the live stream up and running at my shows, but hopefully I'll be able to correct that. And if so, you can watch along on the Facebook page, the YouTube channel, on the Twitter X, or on the Twitch. These are words. These are words that we use in commonplace now, the Twitter X or the Twitch. So if you can't make it out, check those locations and tune in. I was super excited to chat with Craig for a whole host of reasons, but one of the main ones was that his latest album, The Dream Dreaming, is so far one of my favorite releases this year. It is a total vibe and absolutely the mood I have been in musically. That is to say, well, it's a bit of a dancer, isn't it? I've been noticing a trend of these explorations into dance albums as of late, some coming from places you wouldn't necessarily expect. Beyonce's Renaissance, the Robbie Williams-led Lufthouse project, Brittany Howard's latest, What Now?, the fantastic new Idols album, Tank. My God, that Kim Gordon album, The Collective, that just came out this past Friday. And then soon, the new release from Strand of Oaks. It feels like we've experienced a few years of introspective art that was created during the pandemic in solitude, and now we're entering into this phase of we were all stuck in our houses, separated, and now all we want to do is get together and shake our booties. And I am all for it. I'm a dude who used to love to go out dancing, and there's a feeling that's created when the music consumes you and you're in a room with hundreds of other people being taken over like marionettes by the beat and rhythms coming out of the loudspeakers. Much like live shows, being able to share that energy and that experience communally is to me unmatched. Like the great Ren McCormick said, this is our time to dance. It is our way of celebrating life. It's the way that it was in the beginning. It's the way it's always been. It's the way it should be now. So let's dance. If you're just joining us for the first time, or you're a silly Billy who just hasn't done so yet, please be sure to check out www.yothat'smyjawn.com for the link tree to all of the links fit to click for this show. We've got links to past episodes. We've got links to guest appearances on other podcasts. We've got merchandise. We've got links to the socials. And of course, we have the mailing list. Sign on up for the mailing list to get updates delivered straight into your inbox. And, of course, as always, if you want to help us out, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on your podcast provider of choice and give us a little rate and review while you're there. It seems like a little thing, but it means the world to me and helps me to know that I'm not just sitting here speaking to myself, which I very well may be. Who knows? Well, not me if you don't leave a review. Cool. My guest today is a singer, songwriter, musician, and composer who began his career fronting the post-hardcore band Shudder to Think. Since then, he has gone on to be a highly sought-after composer of music for film and television, including a long-standing collaboration with our pal and former guest David Wayne, his friend since childhood. His latest project, The Dream Dreaming, an 11-song orchestral synth-pop banger that he describes as eclectic and sonically whimsical, was just released independently in January of this year on his imprint Tough Lover Records. Folks, it is my honor to welcome to the show Craig Wedren. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm joined today by the great Craig Wedren. Craig, thank you for joining me on Yo, That's My Jawn.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So I'm super excited to have you on here. You're somebody I've wanted to talk to for a very long time for a whole multitude of reasons, not just because you've come up on the podcast before when David and Ken were on to talk about.
That's great.
They were on to talk about the Middle-Aged Dad Jam Band, and then, of course, College Stories came about and all that good stuff.
And Middle-Aged Dad Stories. When were they on?
Last July, I think it was, somewhere
cool.
around there.
That's great.
Something like that.
I don't know where you live, but have you been to any of the shows?
I did. I'm outside of Philadelphia, and I got to see them when they came to town. And man, what a fun show that is!
Oh yeah, it's so fun.
It's great. You play with them a bit.
Yeah, yeah. I actually think I may have just I think I missed the Philly show because I had something going on in New York. It was like right around that like New York, Boston, Philly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think your autograph is on my tour poster, so that's all that matters.
That's great. Good. Then I did my job.
That's exactly right. And the other reason that I'm excited to talk to you, though, I had a moment. I do like these kind of deep dives of kind of studying and all, and I got a chance to read the Stereo Gum interview, which was phenomenal. And then I got done reading it, and I was like, "Well, what's the point of this?" No, but like, what do I have to add? But one of the things that came up in it that kind of shocked me for a few reasons is the heart attack in 2018.
Yeah. I mean, believe me, it shocked me more than it's shocking you.
I would guess so. But one of the reasons it shocked me as I read it is because just last night I went to an eye doctor appointment, and the optometrist said she saw something in my eye, and she was like, "You should probably make an appointment with a cardiologist because I see buildup in your eye that tells me you possibly have a blockage." Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Isn't it fascinating? I never knew that the two were correlated until after the fact, started doing a lot of research, and things that can be, but are not necessarily indicators of blockages include whatever, really truly windows into not just the soul, but like the state of the art gear inside of us.
It's all connected, man.
Yeah,
it's crazy. Like I literally just went because I need a new prescription for glasses,
mm-hmm.
and then left and was like, "Oh shit!" Like,
yeah. How old are you? If
I'm
you don't
46.
Right. So you're like just hitting that age and stage where you sort of kind of got to keep regular tabs, which I guess I was 40. What was I? 48 when I had a heart attack, and I had kind of just started, and my doctors had just started being like, well, we should start tracking this, especially because there's a family history and because I have a history of cancer. But nobody had any idea that it was quite as advanced and hardcore as it turned out to be. It was like 99% blockage and multiple arteries. It was really I don't know. How do I put the only real thing I have to compare it with would be my cancer experience, which is in my late 20s, when we were all still immortal, and that was a sort of slower dawning because it doesn't, like, I was exhausted and weak in certain ways, but cancer and the treatment for cancer weren't like a lightning bolt, and a heart attack is a lightning bolt. And so the suddenness of it, combined, I'm sure, with the age difference, being
Yeah.
older and a parent now and actually having things in my life that are more important to me than me changes one's perspective. And the whiplash from it was really, I mean, beautiful in certain ways and profound. And also, I simply don't recommend it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I,
Well,
I say
hope
avoid it if you can.
yeah, I hope so. I scheduled an appointment almost immediately
Yeah,
because
yeah. Hmm.
I'm also an anxious person, so like
Hmm.
now every single move I'm like, is that a what is that?
Well, see, that's what I was going to say, but I didn't want to freak you out. It's like the main thing since having a heart attack is both sort of, a dilated sense of um, the the preciousness and fragility of everything, but also just, I'm like, I'm kind of a hypochondriac Jewish guy. So most of my like, what's that twitch? What's that itch? Is nothing. But then after a heart attack and cancer, I don't have I don't quite have the confidence in my own insanity that or that it's only my imagination that I
Right.
used to.
Yeah,
Um
exactly.
so that's crazy. That's been crazy. And actually a friend of mine taught me this really cool thing. Um I was I mean, since we're going there, let's just go there. I was really like death tripping for a while, where every single, I would lie there awake at night. I'd wake up at 2 in the morning, which was around when I had a heart attack, and my heart would be racing, and I would be having the worst, not fantasies, nightmare fantasies about not waking up the next day. Even though I knew they were irrational, we have these thoughts deep in the night. And or like I said, just the regular kind of not exhaustion, but just like strain and stress from regular exercise. Um, sensations that I'm sure have always been there, but I'd never noticed or known to pay attention, thought to pay attention to before, are suddenly like, what is that? What's wrong? Um, and it was for maybe, I don't know, a year or two afterward, causing me a lot of stress and sort of deep darkness. This friend of mine was like, "Oh, that's an easy fix. It's a gratitude practice because you're afraid of, there's so much that you love in your life and so much about life that you love, um, that you don't want to lose, that you just need to sort of flip it and think about all the things that you're worried in the middle of the night about losing and never waking up to again, and just be thankful for those things. My son, my music, my wife, my life, my career, my friends, family, the whole thing. Very simple, very basic, but really helped right the vehicle.
Yeah. Yeah. If you don't mind me asking, like that happened 2 years before the pandemic. Like, were
Yeah.
you like, like, was that just like a pile on? Like, I guess,
Oh, that's interesting. That's very interesting. Um, no, in fact, I don't even know. I didn't really associate the two, but I was so busy when I had a heart attack. I was working on the TV show New Amsterdam. I was working on actually a David Wayne pilot for a show called Today's Special, which didn't get picked up. But I just remember there were a lot of projects happening at once. It was a little bit of a frenzy, and that really shut things down or forced me to delegate a lot, which isn't has not always been my strong suit. Um, and so I think the slowdown or shutdown from a post heart attack was healthy in certain ways and maybe made the shock of COVID shutdown slightly less radical
okay.
because I'd already been in this sort of flux.
Yeah.
And but I don't remember associating the two. And I do remember a sense of relief a little bit that came along with the COVID shutdown, which in retrospect, I wonder if it was related to heart attack stuff that I hadn't had a chance to fully stop the car
Yeah.
and sort of take a breath, reassess, and just work on, music for music's sake, which actually is where the new record came from.
Yeah.
That that little window, that period. Um, so I don't know. I guess it was looking back on it, it does feel like one era, but at the time it did not.
Yeah. That makes sense. It makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah. Like a lot of that stuff doesn't really click until afterwards and you start to
Yeah,
see
everything
the,
everything looks so tidy. It's so easy to
yeah.
put a nice bow around it and tell a good story 5 years after the fact.
Yeah. Well, jumping in the speaking of the Wayback, jumping in the Wayback Machine, tell me a little bit
Mhm.
about growing up. Where did you grow up?
So I was born in New York City, but spent my formative years, which is to say maybe 4 to 16 in Cleveland, Ohio, which is how I know David,
Oh,
actually. He
yeah.
he was from Cleveland too. So we grew up together there. And then when I was a junior, yeah, in high school, I moved to Washington, D.C., which is where my high school band, which then became sort of my first career band, Shudder to Think, formed. And then I was DC guy for a while, then went to NYU again with David, and that's where we met Ken and Tom and all of the state and kind of my whole friend crew squad collaborator posse that continues to be the same friend squad now with children who have their own friendships, which is even trippier.
That's wild.
Yeah, like my son and David's son are super good friends, and Ken's son and daughter. I married Tom Lennon's sister, and Tom's son, and Megan's and my. I mean, it's so. Um, if you told me that I had dropped dead when I first had cancer, or had a heart attack, that it would have made more sense than it
Yeah.
actually does. Like watching it unfold in this sort of repeating, glorious familial and like communal playpen,
Yeah.
it doesn't really seem real or possible. And the older we get, I think the more we all appreciate it. And so we all went to college together at NYU and then lived in New York for about 20 years and moved here to Los Angeles. Like after that whole crew had actually already moved here because they were already making movies and acting and doing things like that. I was still in New York making music, um, starting to do a lot of film and TV stuff. And then Megan, my wife, got pregnant, and so we moved here to LA,
That's
which is
that's
where we are now.
beautiful.
Mhm.
One of the things you kind of mentioned there about like that friend group and stuff like that, not just the state guys. I mean, like your work with you lived with Jesse too, right?
Yeah, Jesse
Yeah.
Parrots.
So
Yeah.
I guess one of the things that I find really fascinating about you is that not only do you make brilliant friends, but you remain friends and continue to work with each other like throughout your entire life.
The friendship blessing has been insane. And that too is something that the older I get, the more I appreciate that it's not a given. Not
Yeah,
everybody has that. And also, it doesn't, we sort of take for granted whatever is our reality when we're growing up. And my reality were these extraordinary, magical playmates from very young age, from before memory, really. And that I mean, it continues now, but there just aren't as many opportunities to sort of go super deep with new people. The older you get, and the more sort of full life is,
sure.
if you're lucky. I mean, if you're lucky and your life is full, one of the one not a downside, but it takes a more conscientious effort to sort of make new friends, which we've been able to do. We, have wonderful friends that we've made since we moved to Los Angeles through different schools that our son has gone to, and just, through making things, making movies, making music, making art. Um, but I do not take it for granted anymore. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, you know. I was talking about this with Ken actually a few weeks ago. We were because there's some new great people in Middle Age Dad Jam band whom we'd not known before. And we were just talking about what it means when new people come into this like very, very kind of entrenched, established, lifelong fold. And it's fairly open, probably more so even than when we were in college, when everybody was a little bit harder to get to know or less
Sure.
open.
Yeah.
Um, and also, particularly with the state, there was a sort of gang mentality, that I think some people found hard to penetrate. Um,
It's funny you mentioned that because Kevin was on the show back in March because I did Risk. I did
uh,
and so tit for tat. I made him come on here, and
yeah, good.
but yeah, he kind of told like how hard he had to try to kind of break into the group to kind of get involved, and
That's so funny. I mean, I don't remember what Kevin's entry was like, um, but I just never imagined. I can't imagine a time without Kevin in the state. He feels like such an integral, forever kind of a part. It was actually tough for David. It took him a while to kind of, work his strange magic and be accepted or have his sensibility be accepted by them. He was in a different blah 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 blah. It's not important, but thinking about it in retrospect, so everybody's sort of softer and more porous now. Um, but there's just not the time that there used to be just to like hang out.
yeah,
And there's so many great people who continue to to kind of enter the friendosphere. And then it's a question of like how deeply they can be absorbed just because of life.
yeah. Well, I mean, and it also makes sense too because like not just from a friendship perspective, but also from collaboration and whatnot. That like it gives you a chance to kind of better know someone and
Oh
better
yeah, for sure.
understand someone to be able to kind of communicate on an entirely different level and also be afforded the ability to spend that time together.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, there's a sort of psycho workaholism that I possess, and I think virtually all of my friends, particularly the ones from college, particularly the sort of state crew. And I think that's part of what magnetized us was this crazy ambition, constant sort of creative generators, I guess. Um, the ambition obviously is different than it used to be. Everybody's like pretty steady, stable, successful. But the the engine still just like runs um what is it like this sort of omnivorous curiosity or creativity. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Because it's more fun now. Like I was talking about somebody with this the other day, this thing of like I was talking about it with my wife because she she's a producer. She does a bunch of different stuff. She runs the business side of my music stuff. She produces movies. She's done screenwriting before. She's produced this short film about a trans activist, poet, philosopher named Alok. And it's a wonderful movie. It was just at Sundance, did really, really, really well. Um, and I've been watching her. We're both kind of perfectionisty, or we both sort of wrestle with that. And watching the intensity with which she is doing her job, you know, A, reminds me of my own and all of our friends. And B, of course, I want her to be able to relax and enjoy what she does, right? And so we were talking the other day about how, like when I was in my 20s during Shudder to Think, even though I loved it and loved that band and loved the music that we made and loved, the whole world that we were sort of, a small planet in, the galaxy that we were a small planet in. Um, I did not, and I would not call that playing music. It was like working music. And I
Okay.
just realized, and I sort of realized in talking to Megan, I was like, oh, I play music all the time now. It's so fun. Like it's almost never, I mean, there's work because, because, there's a lunch rush and there are a lot of orders to fill out, but the work isn't in the cooking. It's just in um, the schedule. It's
Yeah.
just it's in the external demands more than the internal demands. And when we were young, it was like these internal demands were so intense. Um, I don't know what my point was, but probably just that everybody's chilled out a little bit,
Yeah.
which just makes it really fun to play together.
Well,
More
I
fun
mean,
probably than that.
yeah, I well with Shudder to Think, like I gotta think once a label gets involved, the size of Epic, that also kind of contributes to taking some of the
So
it's for fun and it's fun.
there was a lot of stress that I'm sure we expected, because we had all read all the books, the Hitmen and whatever other industry rock and roll deal with the devil kinds of tell-alls that we were super into at that time. So you know it's one thing to read it and it's another thing to experience it.
Yeah.
And the experience of it, it's really just like it's just sort of a grown up thing, right? It's just a rite of passage. It's like you get a job. It's a
Yeah.
job. People have invested an enormous amount of money into this project, and there are times and places that you have to be. And it was a shocker. That was a it was it what we in the end it was very clear which things we didn't want to do.
Yeah.
And that was like part of the transition into film and TV is that we just didn't want to be on the road all the time. And we didn't want to have to be working exclusively with each other, exclusively on Shudder to Think music all the time. Um, and it was still the 20th century. It's like now it's much more common for artists to do 50 different things.
Yeah.
You do movies, you do TV shows, you make records, you produce, you write with other people. It's kind of the only way to cobble a career out of music at this point. But then, even through the 90s, there was still this kind of rigidity about like maintaining fidelity to your band or to
Yeah.
like this or that um,
Well, even
kind
not
of
just the band. Like I just talked to somebody recently about this, but like the idea of like jumping genre or
yeah,
even kind of like trying something different was
yeah.
so revolutionary. Where now like there's albums where people are jumping song to song that doesn't
Yeah, and
thematically
I think
sound like
that's
the
just
same.
that I think that's like the upside of streaming is that everybody listens to, starting with the iPod, everybody listened to Johnny Cash and The Clash and Beethoven and Joni Mitchell, what and whatever. And it just wasn't so the new or younger artists, they're just not tripping about that.
Yeah.
But it was such a drag. It's almost impossible to overstate what a bummer it was. If like I was saying, if you're sort of an omnivorous creator type.
Yeah.
And I think what happens with most musicians and probably artists in general is like once you get past your teens and maybe early 20s, where, maybe in your teens you're still kind of self-identifying or trying to figure out who you are, what you believe in, and what you love and hate. Um, at a certain point, you realize it's all just music. I actually just love music and kind of want to explore it all. And that's the point past which I often wonder about and in a certain way admire people I know or artists that I love who get wildly successful for a specific sound and then somehow have to figure out a way to stay interested in that for the rest of their career, for the rest, for the rest of their lives.
Yeah. I
Uh,
mean, to that point, I look at someone like Jack White, like the
yeah.
White Stripes, it was brilliant in its limitations, but also he's too brilliant to be limited by that for
Oh
the
yeah,
rest
for
of his
sure.
career. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? Like, but it
I think he's done a great job actually of staying true
yes.
and staying Jack White. Although, I think some of his best stuff have been the more recent experimental records. And I know that n not all White Stripes fans feel the same way.
Well, it's so funny. Every season there's something that seems to come up in every interview. But I just talked to somebody where I said I'm one of those weird people who likes the Raconteurs more than I like the White
Yeah.
Stripes. I just think like sonically the stuff that they did was just phenomenal.
Yeah.
And my favorite Jack White track of all time is that goofy Bond theme he did with Alicia Keys, "Another Way to Die." Like
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like that's what I want from like it's so bombastic but also
Right.
still like minimalist in it.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But what you were saying about TV and film absolutely makes sense to me then, like that pivot, because you get to each project do something different. Like it's like acting. It's like, well,
Yeah.
now who am I this week?
Yeah. I mean, the way I describe it is it's like I get to musically horror around. And especially coming from 20th century band fidelity mentality, it's still just such a treat and such a pleasure to know it just keeps everything novel because you get to switch it up. Even if
Yeah.
I'm working with the same people, it's gonna just have different parameters, different demands, and different requirements just based on the story, So like I could be working with Anna Waronker, who's one of my composing buddies, um, and just buddies. She's an adult friend, like a lifer, who I met who we didn't really know each other until like the last 10 years or so. But we work on all sorts of different projects together, and not only does it keep everything fresh and exciting, but I think the variety, um, I think everything serves everything else, So we could be working on a comedy one season and then working on Yellow Jackets, another season. And somewhere in there are comedy chops that we discovered or developed from the season before are going to work their way into Yellow Jackets. And that's, I don't know, it sort of guarantees there's a built-in growth mechanism, which I like.
Yeah. Well, I think what back to Shutter though. What excited me was we talked about Jesse a little bit, but the First Love Last Rites
Hmm.
soundtrack was kind of like a revelation because it kind of gave you guys a chance to paint with a different paintbrush
It
almost.
was huge. It allowed us to, and I remember when it came up, and Jesse, he was making his first movie. He had been doing a lot of music videos. He'd done a couple Shudder to Think videos, all sorts of huge MTV sort of alternative era videos of the time. He was making his first movie, as a lot of filmmakers of our generation. There was this great moment in New York City, in like New York indie film in the mid late 90s, where Jesse Peretz, Lisa Cholodenko, um, they were all sort of getting their start, and we were shifting from being a band to being a scoring band. Um, Jesse was a close friend of ours, and he knew that he couldn't afford to license all of this genre music for his cozy, low budget, intimate indie film. And so he asked us to write all these songs, and we were perfectly perched at the time between the two worlds, where we had enough clout and enough friends, that we could get like Jeff Buckley and Billy Corgan and Liz Phair to sign on to essentially sing on like demos that we were making in
Yeah.
in like our in like Jesse's apartment and Nathan's apartment, and wherever I was living at the time. And it just opened the it was like a huge exhale. And it was like right after I had gone into remission from having had Hodgkin's disease. So I had just gone through like chemo and radiation. And it was just it was a very dark time for me and for the band. It was very tender and very sweet in certain ways too, speaking of like preciousness, being reminded about what's important. The band had not really been getting along that well, or we had sort of, we'd been going through all the things that bands go through, like you were saying, when you sign to a major, um, creatively, commercially, interpersonally, ego-wise. We were all at the end of our 20s and sort of at the end of our band rope. And First Love Last Rites, thank you, Jesse Peretz, really allowed us, it just let a lot of light in where there had not
Yeah.
been for a while. It had been dark for a while. And it was such a gift. And then it allowed us to do all these other, like Velvet Goldmine, Todd Haynes movie, and like I said, High Art, Lisa Cholodenko's first movie. It was a gift.
Yeah, the that soundtrack, like and like John Doe and like
Yeah,
Robin
well, so
Zander, and like it's crazy.
yeah, it's crazy. It was crazy. Wait, how did we get in touch with John? X is my favorite band of all time, and probably Nathan's too. Nathan and I grew up as teenagers in DC, obsessed with X. And all my friends in Cleveland, we were obsessed with X. So it was definitely through somebody else who was on that soundtrack, but I don't remember who. But it was this wonderful chain of people, and because of the status, honestly, mainly because of the status of Billy and Smashing Pumpkins, it opened a lot of doors. I mean, Jeff, as far as we were concerned, was legendary, but n not actually commercially, you know.
Right. Yeah.
He just, he for whatever reason, I think because of some of what we were talking about before, that there was this sort of genre rigidity still stuck in the 90s, that Grace wasn't, um, I mean, that's some like Court and Spark, Joni Mitchell level, like Miles Davis level stuff. But it was almost too, it's weird to say that it was ahead of its time, because there's something very classic and traditional about
Yeah.
what he was doing. But it didn't fit in anywhere.
Yeah. That album owns my soul. But
Hmm.
as much as I even say that, like, I Want Someone Badly just slays. I mean,
I
like,
know.
it just slays. And that was actually a question I was going to ask, which is very random. But do you have those isolated vocal tracks?
We must have them somewhere. I don't think I have them digitized. I bet it's so funny. I remember different eras of recordings based on the format that they were recorded on,
Makes
because
sense.
formats were changing so fast around the turn of the century. You
Yeah.
know, things weren't quite fully digital yet. They were sort of like half analog and half digital. And I remember, so Nathan wrote "I Want Someone Badly," and the version I love the version that he sings too. Um, and then we recorded it, and then we re-recorded it with the full band. And then we had a session with Jeff. But I remember vividly being at Nathan's recording on I don't even know what it was. It was some like mini disc DAT thing. And so the tracks exist somewhere. I just don't know what format. I don't
Yeah.
know who's got them. I would bet that Sony has them
That would
because
actually make sense.
that was an Epic Sony release, and that shit is vaulted, right? So I have all of the Discord stuff that Shudder to Think did. I have a ton of, weird like radio promos and things like that too. All the multi-tracks for all of that. But Pony Express record 50,000 BC, First Love Last Rites, we don't have access to,
Oh, it's a drag. Yeah,
which is
because I
crazy because I mean, that stuff, well, I would love to remix and revisit some of the First Love Last Rites stuff. Not I want some badly and Speed of Love were both beautifully recorded. But a lot of that record we really did super fast just as home recordings. And it would be great to be able to kind of fix a few things, not
yeah,
re-record, just like mix them properly.
sure.
But I don't know where that stuff lives. I imagine it's Midtown somewhere.
It figures.
Hmm.
It figures. But so the new album, the Dream Dreaming. I was telling you before we even started this that like. One of my ongoing themes, another one of those things this year is that like because we don't buy music anymore, we don't get
Yeah,
to sit with music as much.
yeah.
And what I realized a few weeks ago is that that's my own fault. That's like having a cake in front of you and being like, well, I have to eat the whole cake. I'm sorry. I can't just savor it or whatnot. So I'm starting to like sit with albums again. And
That's amazing.
I've been nonstop listening to this album for since it came out. Was it a week ago or 2 weeks
Yeah, yeah, it
ago?
was a week. Yeah, I think a week and a couple days.
Yeah, and it is such a beautiful vibe. Like it, you can kind of hear what you were talking about earlier about enjoying making music.
Yeah.
Like it definitely comes across because it feels very meditative and very freeing from track to track. And so, how much do you love this album? Because I'm, I'm in love.
I love this record. I mean, I feel really good about it, and I can say that now that it's out. There was a minute where I wasn't going to put it out. I finished recording everything, and as is often the case with uh project completion, by the time you get near the end, there are like five new things that are more exciting and thrilling.
Yeah.
It's the new cake or the new whatever it is. And my wife was like, you put that record out," and she loves the record, and she's like a melody and lyric girl. She's like an 80s girl. So I really trust her ear when it comes to songs, like songs that get stuck in there in a good way.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of squeezed my eyes shut and put it out. And I can't believe that I was ever thinking that I wouldn't, because I love the record so much. And I feel like it's um, such an honest expression of whatever the hell, all the different things that were going on. Basically, I don't know. I guess I was started working on it in earnest during COVID. And it was sort of it was like getting to travel anywhere I wanted to travel in my imagination when we were all in fact grounded and couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Um, so one song is me and Megan in New York, and another song is summer camp when, when David and I were 12, and another song is Shudder to Think, circa 1996. Not consciously, just again, in retrospect, now that we can put a tidy little bow and frame around it, um, kind of stepping back, I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. And then all of these more synth poppy things started coming out toward the end. It was sort of more, I guess, band-y, for lack of a better word, even though I was playing most of the instruments on it. Um, it, you know, guitar, bass, drums, piano, vocals. And at a certain point, it seems like I got sick of that because things started becoming much more synthy and dancey and poppy and less introspective. And then which is, I'll just say, it kept changing shape until it was done, and I decided it was actually an album rather than just like a series of songs, which was how I started doing it. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I'll just do singles. Part of my thing, and it ties into sort of what we were talking about in terms of the frustration that Shudder to Think was feeling toward the end of the 90s, that stuck feeling is is shoot, I lost my train of thought. We're talking about the record and the thing and the pen and the fun. We feel stuck, and then we get to do whatever we want. And then oh, right. So I knew I just wanted to make music, and I didn't want to have to I didn't want to have to fit thematically or aesthetically into a single cohesive whole. So I was just working on everything as, you know, each song could be whatever it wanted to be.
Yeah.
Um, but then at the end, it's like all your kids are radically, weirdly different, but it turns out that they're all related. It's all one family, and that's kind of how it wound up with the Dream Dreaming.
Yeah. How much did working with Paul Cartwright doing the strings kind of tie it together? Because I
Well,
feel
it
like
was they're insane, those arrangements. They're so gorgeous. Um, I had my friend Joe Wong, who's also a wonderful composer and musician who just put out a beautiful record last week too. Um, and Paul did strings, I think string arrangements for his record also. So Joe had introduced me to Paul. Joe and I were collaborating on I think a couple film scores a bunch of years ago, and he was like, "Oh, we got to bring this guy Paul in. He's just sick violin and viola guy." So he came in, and he was just one of those people, speaking of like Jeff, there are certain people who channel music. They're just like weather vanes or lightning rods or I don't know. They are somehow able to seemingly effortlessly translate the cosmos through whatever their instrument is.
Mhm.
And Paul was one of those people, and I just knew that whatever I did next after this soundtrack that Joe and I worked with Paul on, um, I just knew I wanted to do something with Paul. So rather than, especially because, I'm not working with much of a budget, it's all pretty DIY and independent, the Dream Dreaming, as opposed to, some of the film and TV stuff I get to do where everybody gets paid and it's very
Sure.
sweet. Um, but I figured, especially with Paul, because I wanted his soul and his vision on this record, that I would just send him stuff and literally let him do whatever he wanted to do. So he would just do whatever arrangements he wanted and send them back to me. If I had notes on them, I would give them. But generally speaking, I was like, do the thing that you think is right. Like do that stuff because I trust you.
Yeah.
And 90% of it was just, first, I wouldn't say first thought, best thought, but his first whack that he would send back to me. And it was like, yep, it's going in there. I think he even thought, and who knows, this might freak him out. I'm not really sure. I think he even thought I was going to do a lot more editing and maybe note giving. But there was just something so generous about these string arrangements and the playing that I just didn't want to fuck with them. They had soul and they had vision, and there's in some cases like a real maximal quality to them that goes with the um ebullience, I guess, of the songs.
Hmm.
I think partly because we were making it during lockdown, so there was just this sort of need to bust out and get messy in a good way. Like let's use all the colors in the crayon box. Not all the songs are like that, but there's a good oh, we let the kids into like grandma's closet and they put on all the clothes,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
which is great.
It's awesome. Is there a plan for a vine? Is there a vinyl? Um,
I'm working on it. I
okay.
don't know when it's going to happen, but that process has begun.
Excellent. That's a day one purchase for me. That is
Good.
good.
That's awesome.
At this time, I'm going to run through the questionnaire that I ask every
Cool.
guest. It's called the Jauntlet. It starts with the one hit wonders, and this is just in segment name only because clearly they
Uh-huh.
are not. But the first one, Billy Joel or Elton John? Who do you prefer?
Oh boy, that's so hard. Well, I would say here's how I'm going to judge that because I can't make a choice. Um, I would say on the one hand, I would not be who I am without my mom's copy of Elton John's Greatest Hits and Madman Across the Water that were in her collection when I was very, very little. So, also he was sort of a flamboyant, speaking of going into his grandmother's wardrobe and putting on all the clothes. And prior to Kiss, that was like sort of a North Star for me, a true north for me. That said, I think that that a greater percentage of Billy Joel's output is more consistently high quality than Elton John's. Part of the reason is that Billy Joel, quote unquote, retired
Right.
in the early 2000s, and Elton John continued to make whatever the hell Elton John makes these days. Um, Also, Billy Joel's voice uh, still sounds to me like Billy Joel,
Yeah.
and Elton John's voice changed so radically. Um, so I'm gonna go with Billy Joel. Oh no, I can't do it. I can't
It,
split
it,
the baby.
it's fair. It's fair. Have you heard the new Billy Joel song though? Because to
Ooh.
me, it kind of sounds like he's doing Elton, but doing Elton better than Elton's done in like the past 20 years.
I know, I love it. I loved it. And I immediately texted David and Ken when I heard it the other day, because they're big Billy Joel fans.
Yes.
And I don't know, David was sort of like he was a little chilly on it, which I couldn't believe.
Wow.
It got in there for me. I'm gonna give it up for the new Billy Joel song.
Yeah, it's good stuff, man. Debbie Harry or Joan Jett?
That's also boy, these are like serious questions.
That's right.
Well, Joan Jett solo over Debbie Harry solo, and Blondie over Blondie LPs over Joan Jett LPs,
That's fair.
right?
Yeah.
But I fucking love Joan Jett. I feel like, I mean, I suppose, we all live in our own little online silos, but in my silo, Debbie Harry is like the queen of the internet. Like she owns my feed.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, she just shows up everywhere,
That's
and it's great.
awesome. I've been telling, I'm trying to put this out. Sometimes I like to just say things over and over again until somebody manifests it and it happens. And
Yeah,
I'm just
good.
going to say it here. I just rewatched recently the Joan Jett, Michael J. Fox Light of Day.
Light of Day. It was filmed
And
in Cleveland.
yes, yes. And here's my thing that I'm just pitching everybody. And since you do film scoring,
Some of
you
that.
might be able to make it happen. Here it is. Don't you think they should remake that with Phineas and Billie Eilish?
I don't remember what happens in Light of Day. Is it a brother sister thing?
It is a brother sister thing. Yeah.
That would be amazing, but they have to shoot it in Cleveland.
Yes. Well, 100%. Yeah. I would have it no
I'm
other
gonna
way.
rewatch. I'm gonna rewatch Light of Day with that in mind.
I will throw this out there. And look, I'm not a fan of piracy, but there may be a copy on YouTube. I don't know.
You could do a sort of AI proof of concept.
I didn't even think of that. That's actually, I might,
I mean,
I
if we're
might,
going for piracy, let's just do the whole idea.
let's just speed it up.
Yeah.
The next one, Aretha Franklin or Tina Turner?
Well, I feel like they're radically different. I mean, Aretha through the mid 70s and then Tina.
Yeah. Yeah. That absolutely tracks. Here's one that's interesting. Nirvana or Pearl Jam? Are you allowed to vote for people who you've played, like you've toured with? I don't think that's fair.
I don't know. I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want any of my friends from any of those bands to
Yeah,
so I'm gonna abstain.
you abstain from that one. That's
Yeah.
fair. I was thinking about it as I was like running down this before I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
wait, can I even ask that one? I don't know. That's
You
weird.
can't ask, yeah.
Next one, Janis Joplin or Stevie Nicks?
Well, I mean, Janice's voice and her soul, and Stevie's songs.
Okay, yeah, I like it. I like it. The big cliche, Beatles or the Stones?
Um, I'm just gonna I'm gonna tell a story from. I went to a Grammy party the other night, like an after Grammy party, and there was some dancing happening in one of the rooms, and there weren't very many people. There were maybe like 20 people on dance floor, something like that, and they were just playing disco. It was great. I was going off. I wasn't really paying attention to my limbs, and I accidentally smacked somebody in the ass. And it happens when you're dancing. Like I couldn't see them. My hand like flopped backward, and I smacked somebody's butt. And I turned around to apologize, and it was Paul McCartney.
Oh my goodness. Oh God.
And I was very freaked out. I was really happy. It was like, yes, of all the people on earth that I get to spank tonight accidentally, it's Sir Paul. Um, I mean, so I can't make that choice. I feel like those bands are so radically different, and that they feed different parts. They fill different
Yeah.
needs. But the Rolling Stones, along with X, are probably the band that's given me the most pleasure in my life. So, I mean, I guess I'll go with Rolling Stones just because like they're so deep in my DNA. But
Yeah.
the Beatles have better songs. I mean, like straight up,
Yeah.
like all the way through. Their songwriting chops are unparalleled.
With the Stones being that pivotal in your life, do you have you heard this conspiracy theory that Graham Parsons wrote Wild Horses?
I think I've heard like something about Graham Parsons' involvement in like that whole era. And
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting.
what do we think?
I could see that he helped. I just
Yeah.
can't see like what are you gonna do? Like just give away Wild Horses? You're not giving
Yeah,
that away. You know what I
don't think
mean?
so.
Like
Well, but also isn't the story that it was like Marianne Faithfull in the hospital after an overdose were the lyrics for that?
yeah, but if you Bust Out the Red String. There's something about Graham Parsons' sister and Tied to Horses. I don't know. It's a
Oh,
yeah,
very
yeah, yeah.
interesting. I'm gonna have to look it
It's a
up.
thing. It's a
Did you
thing.
listen to the new record?
I did. I actually really like it. It made my top 30 last year.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, I think it was actually number 30, but still, it
That's
made
fine. That's fine.
like
That's pretty good for
look, I'm not gonna lie. The fact that I liked the Stones album in 2023,
it's pretty insane. Yeah.
it's incredible.
Uh-huh.
And to end with the Muddy Waters track, made me cry. Like it literally made me cry because I was like, oh my god, you guys are literally you're done. Like you can't do anything after that. That's it. That's the
Did
swan song.
did you listen to the blues one that they did? It was like all blues covers.
Yeah,
I don't know, 10 years ago, I guess. I thought that was pretty great,
yeah, it
actually.
was great. Like I would love to. I really like when they were doing those New York shows around the release of the album. Like I would
Yeah.
have loved to have been because like that's what I want. I don't want to go see them in a stadium or something. I just want to be in a room where they're just playing because
Yeah.
like my God, like they're still so tight.
I would be pretty psyched if they did a thing at the Sphere in
Oh
Vegas. I feel like
yes,
they could do something kind of special there and make that work.
I hear the sound in that room is
It's
incredible.
insane. It's
You've
insane.
been?
Yeah, we went to see you two there a few months ago.
That's wild.
I married into I love you too, but I also married into like an obsessively nutty U2 family, like Chicago Irish 80s.
Uh huh. Yeah.
Tom and Megan.
Yeah. It all
But,
makes sense. It all
yeah.
makes sense. The last one of the one hit wonders, a Bohemian Rhapsody or Stairway to Heaven?
Oh, let's just go with Bohemian Rhapsody just because it's so audacious.
Yes. Yes.
It's
Absolutely.
audacious without being overly serious.
I like it. It's
Whereas
true.
Stairway to Heaven's pretty serious.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though I fucking love it.
The back half of this is the top 10 countdown. We use Jawn in Philadelphia to mean whatever you want it to mean. It doesn't have to be music. It can be anything. As a matter of fact, your good pal Kevin Allison said it best when he introed me for my Risk performance, and he said Philadelphians use the word Jawn like the Smurfs use the word Smurf. So think of it in that in that concept. But it starts with the first Jawn. What was the first thing you were obsessed with when you were a kid?
Elton John.
It goes back to the greatest hits and Man Man on the Water.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I
But,
dig it.
but I'm gonna give him a Jawn last name,
Yes, yes, yes.
surname.
Number two, what's your current John? What are you into right now?
What am I listening to lately? I've been listening to a lot of dance music, like a lot of disco and a lot of like club. Like I've been listening to what's it called? Like Jersey Beat.
Okay.
Is that even? I'm literally gonna look on the Spotify playlist and see what it's called. I think it's called Jersey Beat. Yeah, it's just been I've been listening to Jersey Beat and Bonk, Phonk.
Okay.
I don't know. I couldn't tell you what distinguishes one from the
Yeah.
other, but I've been listening to those playlists a lot, especially since I got the new subwoofers installed in my studio.
Nice.
There's like a
Um,
lot of bass lately.
it's funny. Like I feel like, and I think it's kind of a post-pandemic thing that, like, I feel like we're about to explode in kind of a dancey kind of
I
thing.
think that's what it is too. It's all I want to do is dance. I keep making people dance with me in the studio, who think that they're, past the age that they actually want to do that until they start doing it. And then it's like, all right, this is what all bodies need.
It's
Bodies and
awesome.
souls.
I love it.
And then you
Uh,
get to accidentally, you never know whose ass you're gonna smack.
that's right. You might ham smack a beetle a knight.
Exactly.
You hit a knight.
That's right. A night.
Number three, what was your first concert? First live show?
Well, the first arena show that I went to, I used to go to, I grew up in Cleveland. My dad lived in Columbus. So there was always like the Ohio State Fair, which would have like the Osmonds or whatever. But the first proper arena rock concert I went to was Foghat and the Outlaws at the Cleveland Coliseum.
Wow.
And we had front row center seats courtesy of Jeff Golenberg. And the main thing about it was that the Fog Hat merch were just these baseball caps that said Fog on them.
I would kill for one of those
Yeah, I
right
know you
now.
did.
Number four, what was the last live show you went to? Last concert?
Uh, what was the last show? Was it Fever Ray? I don't know. Fever Ray is what comes to mind. One of
Okay.
my favorite bands, and definitely one of my favorite live bands.
Awesome.
Yeah. Oh
Number,
no, it was Joe Wong. I went to see my friend
oh,
Joe Wong for his record release party at Hollywood Forever Cemetery, and it was beautiful.
that's awesome. Also, I'm going to have to check that album out. Just on your praise alone. I'm
Oh,
excited
and
to
then
hear it.
last week I went and saw a room full of Teeth, who are this like contemporary classical vocal group, which was just beautiful. And Mary Lattimore, who's a magnificent harp player, opened. Oh yeah, I've been going to good shows lately. It was
Yeah, I
good,
was just going
and
to
it's
say,
a
it
good
sounds
run.
like a
Oh,
good
yeah.
run. Number five, what was your favorite concert? What was the best live show you ever went to?
Um, I don't know what the best live show was that I went to, but Charlie XCX at Coachella last summer was beyond my wildest dreams and so totally cathartic and life affirming. I loved it.
That's awesome. Great
Yeah.
answer. Great answer. Number six, who have you never seen live that you wish you would have? They can be living or dead.
I was literally just thinking about this the other day. I'm thinking, I can't believe I never saw that person. I kind of can't believe that I never saw Joni Mitchell, you know, uh, let's say the 80s would have been the earliest that I would have been able to see her, but like a 80s era Joni Mitchell, I'm kind of sad. And I really kick myself, but not as hard as my wife kicks me for missing Kate Bush when she did those
Oh,
run of
man.
shows like 8 years ago or whatever.
Yeah. Wow. I'm
Yeah.
still waiting for this Kate Bush Big Boy song that's been promised
Yeah,
for
I
like the
know.
past
That's
five,
been
six,
done
seven.
for like,
Yeah, like I this just make it happen. Somebody
I
make it
know.
happen.
I know. I'm
But
I'm I'm kind of bummed that I never saw Outcast either.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Definitely. My answer to that question is someone we spoke about, and it's a very hyper specific show, and that is Jeff Buckley played. I don't know if you know the Grape Street Pub in outside of Philadelphia. Is this small little club. I used to play there a bunch,
Yeah.
and I guess he came through and just played there one night while working on sketches. And goddamn, like I should have been
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Goddamn, I should have been there.
Although by the time he was working on sketches, it was a different band. I mean, a wonderful band, but the Grace era band, you just
Oh
can't
yeah.
can't beat it.
It's phenomenal. Number seven, name an unappreciated John, something you wish had a little more shine to it.
I'm gonna go with Mind Science of the Mind, which was a Nathan Larson side project that he made in the mid 90s, like around when we were doing Pony Express record. And Jeff actually played bass in the live version of it. He didn't play on the album, but it was Nathan, Joan Wasser, Mary Timony, and Kevin March. It's a great record. I think he's going to
Wow.
re-release it at some point.
Awesome. That's awesome. Number eight, what's your favorite album?
Well, I'll just go with the two that come to mind per our conversation.
Yeah.
Wild Gift by X, Sticky Fingers by the
Yeah.
Rolling Stones, and some amalgam of the first two Pretenders records.
Definitely. They're
Like
like,
that.
man, they were on fire, weren't they?
Oh,
Like,
God.
they were just so good.
That, you know what? I can't believe I never saw Pretenders Mach 1.
Okay. Yeah.
I saw them later, but
I used to say my one of my answers to that was the Talking Heads,
yeah.
but it turns out I saw them at the Philadelphia Zoo. They did like a 7-song set, and I was 2 years old, so it
Oh, that's
counts.
the best.
So it counts.
That's kind of even better.
Yeah, right.
No judgment, just
Yeah, I'm sure I loved it.
yeah.
Number nine, name an artist whose output you'll consume anything they release.
Ooh. I'm there are people I'm always curious about. It doesn't mean I will consume it. I will judge it. But like, I'm always curious and interested to hear what Paul Simon is up to. I'm always curious and interested to hear what Joni Mitchell and Kate Bush are up to. And I'm sure there are 1,000 other people. Those are the ones that come to mind.
No, it's high class. That's high class. Those are excellent choices. The 10th and final of the top 10 countdown. What is your favorite Jawn of all time? It can be anything you want it to be.
I'm gonna go with David Lynch.
Wow. Yes. I would talk to somebody about this once, but there's an alternate universe where because he was desired for this role, where David Lynch directs Return of the Jedi. And I want to live in that world.
I know. It's so close to our world, but we can't quite pierce the veil.
I know. Some other life. In some other life. I said Disney Plus should back the truck up and give him like one of the ancillary background characters and just be like, go David Lynch crazy and make a Star Wars one shot of this character.
That would be amazing. Or just again, like do your AI version of whatever you want.
That's right. Now, I keep forgetting this. You did around the release of Adult Desire, you did the VR thing. These Apple lenses do you think
the Apple Vision Pros?
Yeah. Do you think that we might have hit something here? Like, if I keep thinking that like something's got to click with VR, like
something's got to
Oculus,
click because it's so rad, but it just doesn't seem to. I've heard different people talk about it, and they're like, nobody wants to wear those things on their face. It's not going to help anybody get laid,
Yeah.
But I haven't tried it yet. I'm super curious to try it. My former assistant, who's a wonderful composer and musician in his own right, Matt Wang, he sent me a link. Like Moog has made this whole crazy virtual synth music making modular thing that only exists in Apple Vision Pro that I'm super curious to try.
Yeah.
But I also have a feeling it's going to be one of those things where it's cost prohibitive, and if it doesn't click, then like nothing new and exciting is going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm hoping personally that it does click, and then I can take all the VR stuff and 360 stuff that I did from my last two records, Adult Desire and Wand, and just like have somewhere that it can live, that it's like accessible and available to people, because I think that would be really fun.
Well, I'm sure at launch now that Apple needs things for people to do on it, you should partner with them, and then maybe you can get one for free.
I like your thinking. Like this.
I'll
tell them you said so.
Yeah, let them know. I hold sway. Tim Cook, good friend of mine. Yeah. You said vinyl possibly on the way, or on the way, is starting on the way. Any chance of touring on this, or?
Yeah, sure. There's always a chance. There would need to be some level of demand just because of the logistics of it.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to play some shows around it. Realistically, at this point, they would probably just be solo shows, just me adapting the material, for a one-man situation. But particularly with this record, I would love to do it properly. Full band, full production. But there would need to be some financial backing.
Sure.
Because I don't want to siphon my son's college fund to play a show.
To rock. Yeah. I get it. So if anybody wants to track you down on the internets, what's your best way to track?
Just the usual places, Instagram, and I don't know if I have a Threads thing anymore, or a Threads thing is the new thing, or a Twitter thing anymore, or whatever the hell we're calling it.
Yeah.
And it's all just Craig Wedren, at Craig Wedren.
It's awesome. Thank you, not just so much for doing this, but for creating so much incredible music and just everything you've done throughout your career and will continue to do, because you excite me. I find you incredibly fascinating, and you are responsible for one of my favorite songs of all time, and it's a snippet. And it's literally just the theme to Stella. It just fills me with joy.
Oh,
It absolutely fills me with joy.
thanks, man. I love the theme to Stella. There's so many little things like that, like theme to Stella, state theme, the Rainy Days theme. I want them to exist on platforms, but they don't. And I got to figure out who to talk to about permission and things because.
Yeah. Well, in researching this, I was happy to find that Higher and Higher is streaming. And that also filled me with so much joy because, like, I don't know what you captured on that, but it is perfect. It's the perfect encapsulation of that film. It just is so good.
Thank you. That was just Teddy Shapiro and I had a moment. And I mean, when we work together, we have moments, but I mean, that was just one of those good moments where we looked at each other and we were like, mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's perfect. So again, thank you so much for taking some time and chatting with me.
It's been a pleasure.
My thanks again to Craig for joining me on the show today. Craig's latest album, The Dream Dreaming, is available now wherever you stream music, with a vinyl release coming soon in the near future. You can find out more about Craig and links to all of his socials at www.craigwedren.com. Links to all of those, as always, are in the show notes. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe to the Yo, That's My Jawn podcast wherever you get your podcast from. And yo, it is not too late to get yourself a super awesome Jawn Scout Merit Badge for Citizenship of the World just by rating and reviewing us. Don't forget to visit www.yothat'smyjawn.com for the link tree with links to articles, merchandise, all of the previous episodes of this podcast, guest appearances on other podcasts, and more. And while you are there, be sure to sign up for our mailing list to get all of the updates delivered straight into your inbox. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/YoThat'sMyJawn for updates and live streams. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter X and Threads at Yo That's My Jawn, and search Yo That's My Jawn on YouTube to find the Yo That's My Jawn YouTube channel. Like and subscribe the heck out of that ish. We want to hear from you. Reach out and touch some Jawn. Guys, don't forget to tune in to hear me every Monday from 5 to 8 p.m. on Why Not Radio. That continues to be so much fun. And this Thursday, we are back with an all-new episode of the Tabletop RPG actual play podcast that I produce, Oops, All Bards. So be sure to check that out too. You know me, just staying busy. Blue skies. Until next time, everybody. That's my Jawn! Displace the guilt, embrace the pleasure. You taste it, things that don't need to be measured. Yo, That's My Jawn is a Lonely Monk production. Written and produced by yours truly, Nate Runkle. Theme song by me, under the moniker Nate 3.0. Special thanks to Fox Run Brands, DX Ferris, Andrew Scott, Maggie Poulos, Dan Drago, Natalie Runkle, and the beautifully vibrant and wickedly stunning Katie Daubney. If you or anyone you know has any ideas they would like to share or any guests they would like to hear on the podcast, please feel free to reach out to us at yothat'smyjawn@gmail.com or hit us up on the socials at yothat'smyjawn. Until next time, be sure to displace the guilt and embrace the pleasure. Tilt your head back and shout to the world, Yo, that's my Jawn.